Thank you. Thank you, Joshua. Thank you for the introduction and welcome to everybody that's on the call today. I'm really honored to be here presenting on this topic that I'm very passionate about, that I kind of delved into by accident. I was looking for uh, opportunities to volunteer, and I saw an ad for a hospice volunteer, and I thought, oh, I'll just maybe I'll try this. And so I started my hospice volunteer training with Delta Hospice. And as I was going through it, I hadn't had any losses, but really connected with the lost journey because I was actually going through losses and I wasn't even recognizing them as losses. And as I started volunteering, I noticed that there weren't very many culturally sensitive services that were available, especially to the South Asian community. And so that kind of started my journey down understanding grief and loss. And then during COVID, I kind of was supporting individuals one-on-one, and lo and behold, we can't see them face to face. And so that kind of inspired me to develop my program, Healing with Ancient Teachings, a resiliency program that's really looked at, how do we be more resilient? What are some of the skills that we need? What are some of the things that ancient teachings have taught us? Like, so when I go back to Guru Nanak's teaching from Sikhism or from the Hindu teachings or the Buddhist teachings, what have they taught us about life and facing loss and change in our world? And hence, I developed this program, and NSFU has partnered with me to do a study interviewing the individuals that took the program. And so there's a study, a PhD study, one of the students have done on how to develop culturally sensitive programs, and then look at how it's helping improve mental health of the individuals that take it. So in today's presentation, I really wanted to kind of delve into that, really understanding the cultural, religious, and societal influences, uh, the impact on bereavement, and particularly of the South Asian community. I want to increase awareness around grief and loss in the Punjabi community in particular. I come from the Punjabi Sikh community, so that's my background. I came to Canada in mid 70s, and all my education is from here. So I would like to say that I'm pretty much bicultural. I really understand. I read and write Punjabi. I speak Hindi as well. And then yet I've grown up here and I definitely understand the Western culture as well. So the third objective of today's session is to identify, what does client-centered approaches to providing support look like so that you can support not only South Asians, but individuals from any culture that's different than yours. So next slide. Okay, so let's look at the population. Who are South Asians? So nationally, according to the 2021 statistics, South Asians are the largest visible minority group here in Canada, making up 2.57 million people. That's about 7% of our population. And BC in itself, I'm assuming most of the participants are from BC. BC ranks the second in Canada for the South Asian population, that after Ontario. So here in BC, the Metro Vancouver area is home to most of the South Asians. 473,970 people make up about 9% of the province's total population. Okay, so this makes the South Asians again second largest after the Chinese. So according to the 2021 stats, the South Asian population, the largest population that we have is in actually Surrey, BC, which is 212,000, which is almost like 40% of the total population. So that really, is it really speaks to how big that population is. I think it's the largest outside of the Punjab, where a lot of the population is from. Abbotsford also has a huge South Asian population, especially Punjabi Sikh. And when we talk about South Asians, I think it's important to acknowledge that not everyone that's termed South Asian is Punjabi Sikh, but it's made up of individuals that are from Bengal, and they speak Bengali, Tamil, Gujarati, Senalis, and Goan and Kashmiri. So just to name a few, but there's probably more than that. And they practice different faith groups, so they're not all Sikh, even though if you're in Surrey, you probably see a lot of Sikh population. But there's Hindu, Muslim. They also practice Christianity. There's Buddhist and Jain. And so, and the other thing to acknowledge is that there's like 5 generations of South Asians. And so each generation would have a different understanding of their culture, or they've incorporated the different cultures around them. And they don't always come from India. So there's, especially with the immigration nowadays, South Asians can come from England or Australia or, whatever, New Zealand, whatever, wherever they're, so it's like they're totally global citizens, not just individuals that are from Punjab. It's coming straight to here. And the other thing to acknowledge is also we see a lot in the news is like the students that are coming to join us. So there's the immigration patterns have changed. And when my parents came here, they came here for economic reasons, came here with nothing. Some of the new immigrants that are coming from India today come here to open businesses. They're well qualified. There's doctors and lawyers and professionals that are moving to Canada. So they're no longer just individuals that are low literacy that are coming that don't know English skills. Many of the immigrants that are coming in now do speak English. And this is just another graph that shows the different cities here in the Lower Mainland where some of the South Asian population is. So definitely you can see from there, Abbotsford and Surrey tend to have the higher South Asian populations, and traditionally Richmond has the more Chinese population. From my diversity hat, I wanted to also share with you layers of culture and programming that one needs to be aware of. And this is a model that Hofstad had shared. And so what he says is that all of us, when we come into this world, at the bottom of the triangle, we have a culture that we all share. So it's like our human nature, our values, our need for safety. It's inherited, it's universal as we come into this world. And then culture, then there's a culture that we learn within our families. There's a culture that we learn in our school systems. There's our faith that also adds to our culture. And so as we as we grow up, there's also our personalities, right? And some of that is inherited, some of that is learned, and it's specific to each individual. And why we need to keep this in mind as we go out into support individuals is that today I can share with you some of my stories, Sarb can share with you some of her stories, but the thing to keep in mind is that we need to treat individuals at that top part, really build that connection one-to-one, learn from that person what's important to them, and to be able to really connect with them at that individual level, we need to be curious of, what does this do? What does this mean to you? And be able to, and be open to hearing, open to learning about how this person perceives their own culture, their own faith. using good listening skills and our good communication skills. A grief and bereavement is a natural emotional response to loss of any kind. And so various events, such as a death of a loved one, or even like a breakup or a significant life change, can trigger feelings of grief. And so, like I shared earlier, when I first started on my journey with grief and bereavement, I hadn't faced a major loss, but as I was going through the training for the to be a volunteer, I was recognizing, wow, hang on, I'm going through a lot of these grief responses. You know, what's going on for me? And for me, it was just the loss of the hopes and dreams, the hopes and dreams that little girl had of what her life was going to be like. And, you know, I was 20 and, you know, had arranged marriage. And so the hopes and dreams that I had of what my life would be like uh, were um, were were lost, right? And I was going through a grief process as a result of that. Later on in life, life would throw me lots of challenges and lots of losses through suicide, murder, you know, loss of a spouse, and so you know, there's been a lot of losses in my life, and um, so I speak on this topic from experience and from the training I've had, I guess. So, where grief is a universal experience, but it's also deeply personal and unique to each individual. Like I said at the top of that triangle, right? And so it depends on what our worldview is, and you can experience these responses really differently. So a person who's from like an individual worldview, more of that Western worldview, will will experience a lot of these emotional and physical responses differently than someone that's from a collective worldview. And collective worldview would be a lot of the Eastern cultures, so definitely South Asian, Chinese, even the First Nations can be seen as a collective culture. So even though we're going through the same emotional and physical responses, how we experience cognitive or social especially can be very big for someone from a collective society where you want to fit in, right? You want to honor traditions, honor what the elders are telling you, even decisions, how they're made, will influence how you grieve or spiritual and religious beliefs, right? So some individuals can be very regimented in their religion and want to follow everything to a T, and whereas others will be more spiritual. And our own understanding of what that religion is teaching us can be quite different. So that adds a lot of complexity, right? And one of the biggest things I've seen with my clients is just, or even with my own family, is face saving. And face saving, like, yes, we all want to be respected, but getting another's approval it can be quite difficult to move through alongside your grief because so you can have things, maybe ways that you want to honor the person that's lost, but then you're facing what your elders are wanting or what tradition is, and trying to navigate that can be quite difficult. And also, there could be biases and judgments around how that person died or your how much you do or you don't do, right? So how much money you're spending on a funeral can be a lot to do with face saving because you want to make sure that you know your family member, your loved one is sent off in a graceful way. Whereas, just so that you can say to your relatives, you know, I had the best flowers or the best whatever it was. And so sometimes we forego what we really want in honor to honor what others want. Okay, next slide. So the 5 stages of grief. proposed by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And so this is not a linear process. It can go whichever way, but the thing to remember, I think, in this is that again, like grief, as we're going through it, uh, denial, anger can look quite different. Like if you're from the South Asian cultures, showing anger may not be the right thing. They might be discouraged for to show anger or even to express grief through tears. Um, depending on how religious they are, they could uh, turn to prayers as a way to bring solace. But if I don't understand those prayers, that's not going to bring me the solace that I'm looking for. So you could be bargaining with the Creator to, for to support you. But again, if you're mad at the Creator, that kind of really complicates your grief. And then the recovery process can be more complicated as well because your grief is internalized. And the best example I have of that is a gentleman that was repeatedly going to his doctor to say, I have chest pains. I'm having chest pains. And so he was repeatedly doing this, and the doctor would be, doing the x-rays, doing whatever test, and then kind of saying, well, there's nothing wrong with your heart. But time and time again, he would say, no, there's something wrong. But when he talked to me, and I'm asking him these open-ended questions around what's going on, and then it's like, it was actually the grief from the loss of his wife is what he was feeling. But he didn't recognize it as that. He just thought he was having a heart attack. So in the Punjabi Sikh community, there's a huge acceptance of his will. So just really what in the word that they use for that is hukam. And it's significant in that um, if you have a deep spiritual understanding of that before the loss, then you're going to walk through the grief pretty much okay because you're just be in that acceptance place of, there's going to be change in life, and I'm just going to work my way through this. But if you're not religious, if you haven't understood it and you're just doing the ritualistic, reading the text or just listening to the prayers, again, it can cause a lot of distress. A lot of times at funerals, I've been at funerals where they've said, oh, no, no crying. It's going to cause distress to your loved one. If they don't cry, then how is it that you're going to, let go of some of those emotions that are being built up inside? I've also been at funerals where there's been wailing, right? There's a real outwardly expression of grief. But so, again, it's very individual, and uh, it's just understanding where that person is at. So some of the thought I would just go over some of the rituals that can happen before a funeral. So again, depending on what faith you're from, this slide is definitely from a Sikh point of view, and in the Hindu faith as well. Their rituals do include a cremation, and they have mourning periods as well. Also includes prayer and ceremonies. In the Muslim faith, same thing. They have prayers as well, and they also have specific customs that are specific to their faith. And then Christian South Asians follow church-based funeral rites. In the Sikh faith, there's prayers that are held in the home or at the Gurdwara, which is a place of worship. In terms of attire, a lot of people wear more solemn, softer colors, whites or blacks. But I was reflecting on that with Sarb, and and I feel anyways that our funerals are becoming like weddings now, and there's like themes, and what was important to the person, and there's slideshows, and it's yeah, but traditionally, the more traditional way is to just wear black or wear white, cover your head. Day before the funeral, the close family members will bathe and dress the cadaver in new clothing, their, person's favorite perfume or cologne. Um, Again, crying is discouraged because there's supposed to be this strong faith in his will. Okay, so next slide. So where is this, strong, faith in his will, right? And so like what are some of the teachings around that? This is what I kind of looked at. And so one of the teachings is from Guru Nanak, and Guru Nanak Dev Ji was the founder of the Sikh faith. And so what he says is Nanak Dukhya Sab Sansar. He says the entire world is full of pain and grief. And there isn't a house out there that hasn't been touched by pain or grief. And so when a young mother lost her child, she came to Guru, and she says, oh my God, like, I've lost my child. He was so young, only you can bring him back to life. And will you bring him back to life? And he says, yes, definitely, I can do that. He goes, but you need to go and bring me rice from a home where there hasn't been a death. And she goes, oh, no problem. I can do that. I'll go get you the rice. And so she goes to the different houses in the village, and someone had had two deaths, someone had had young people die, some people had an older person die. So each house that she goes to, there has been deaths. And so the moral of the story was that that the entire world is full of pain. Sometimes our pain seems the most pain, but there's others that are also going through pain. And then when we looked at pain, and then we said, that's the next slide, what is pain? And it's basically a label that we use to describe something that doesn't feel good. Could be an emotion, a thought, a behavior, a physical, it's a physical energy that was designed to move through us. But when we misidentify things, and we think, things are permanent, and we miss the lesson around impermanence, then we're not in acceptance of that change, right? And that's what kind of creates that lump in our throat, or a block in our heart, or sometimes we feel it in our stomach. So that pain gets stuck, and we can't move through it. And then the next teaching he said was, hang on, man tu jot, manjita jagdit. So how do we get through this? He says, you know what? Conquer your mind, because it's your mind that is the one that is causing you all of this pain. It perceives things as being permanent. It perceives things as mine, and then that's what causes us pain. And another teaching that that is really important to the Sikh faith is, oh my mind, you are the embodiment of the Creator. Recognize your essence. So that basically is saying that this physical body, these emotions that we have, these senses that we have, that those are not you. There's a bigger part of that is you. And then in that he says, Mantu Jot Srup. So that basically is saying you are the embodiment, or you are the light that's within. You are and some people call it the seer or the doer. That is you. And then when we looked at it through a yogic philosophy, and then we said that, how we process pain in our life is closely connected to our subconscious programming and our ability to connect with that part of us that is infinite. So that's our true self, right? So the way to do that is through meditation, sometimes mantras, sometimes prayers. It also could be kirtan, which is the singing of the hymns. And, and then there are two other things that our gurus taught us, which was deep devotion and service to our fellow brothers and sisters. So serving, volunteering, uh, that when you start going down that path, it takes our mind off of our own pain, kind of like this Guru Nanak saying to this lady, "Go find me the rice." It takes our minds off of our pain, and then helps us connect with our own compassion, our own empathy, and our own gratitude. So you can't be in gratitude and in pain at the same time. I'll say that again. You can't be in gratitude and pain at the same time. So if one can shift their mindset to that of looking at life through gratitude, and it starts a flow. So automatically life becomes better and better. Life takes on more meaning and relevance and reverence. So again, an important part of grief and bereavement is making sure that there are social supports available. And for Punjabi Sikhs, Gurdwara, which is a place of worship, is where we turn to for social support. And it also comes from often like our close-knit families, friends, and then these they help provide that emotional comfort, some of the practical assistance. They could be making meals to take to the house where somebody's bereaved, and that creates that sense of belonging during a difficult time. Now, having said that, remember that triangle again. So there's a lot of different dynamics here in the West or even in India. Our family sizes are changing, smaller and smaller families. Not everybody has big families. You might see the monster homes in the news and stuff, and yet there could only be two people living in that home. So there's I think, a misconception that all South Asian families are large families and we have these huge support systems. And then, especially when there's a controversial loss, sometimes in my own experience, there was a controversial loss of my sister-in-law, which she was murdered, and you can feel very alone because people on the outside are judging you for that loss. And oh, we don't want to associate with a family where there's been a murder, right? God knows what kind of a family they are. So those judgments actually prevent people from doing what our gurus have taught us, is to help others in time of need. So the grief can be quite complicated because where people are judging you, you can also start judging yourself and questioning that, what have I done wrong? And so having a large family network can also be a curse, right? So, if your family dynamics where you're all getting along and everybody is bonded, which is a dream family, right? Like that's great. But then, when relationships are tarnished and you're not getting along at a time of a loss, it can create a lot of extra stress as well. And also, depending on how many elders are in the family, some elders are very outspoken and they only want to do things their way. And so, you wanting to honor how your mom lived or your brother lived or whoever might be really hard for you because your Western mindset might kind of go, oh, I just want to do things. I want to keep it simple. I want to honor the music that they liked, and our elders would be like, oh my God, you can't have music. Like, so it creates a lot of tension in family situations as well. So what works for one person may not necessarily work for another. So it's crucial to respect individual boundaries and preferences when you're offering support as well. So some of the rituals and traditions that we have, definitely lots of prayer, um, lots of chanting of mantras, Satnam, Vaheguru. You'll hear a lot of that kind of chanting. Hymns are sung. We've already talked about bathing and dressing the body. There's rituals around that. Funeral, definitely have rituals around how funerals are done. And then post-funeral, funerals are always cremation. And post-funeral, there's prayers done, and the ashes are scattered in flowing water. So a lot of times people will take ashes back to India, but then when my husband died, we did it here in White Rock, and so it just whatever the preference is for the family as well. Um, yeah, so we had a COVID death, so it made it that much more difficult to do some of these traditions as well. So gathering in the home differing around COVID was discouraged. So you didn't have those family supports or friends that were coming over to support you or even providing meals. So I think rituals and traditions can provide a sense of structure for you and meaning during a very chaotic and overwhelming time where there's all this grief and the pain that you're feeling in the heart. In the religious ceremonies and the prayers, the memorial services, these rituals can facilitate this expression of grief and honoring the memory of the deceased. But it also can foster that sense of community. But if your relationships with your loved ones aren't so good, it can just be an added stress as well. So as we kind of come to the end of some of this, some reminders for you as practitioners. Uh, how do we connect with people that are from a different culture? Uh, so our grief practices in the South Asian community are deeply influenced by the religion, our family values, and our community norms. And that in itself you can say, well, that's true for other people too. But like I said, if you're from a collective culture, that community norm, uh, it's it's always at the back of your mind because we all want to be accepted and included. We don't want people talking about our families. So trying to decide what that community norm that you're willing to continue with or not continue with. I know for me has been a real challenge. When my brother-in-law died, he wanted uh, a Bollywood song played. Like he had said that. And so that was totally against what my in-laws wanted or what the rest of the elders wanted. But again, I felt that it was important enough. So we kind of didn't actually have the song, but we had the music. So kind of tried to honor what they wanted and what he wanted. So again, asking, you as a practitioner can avoid assumptions. Uh, Again, remember just because if you're brown skinned or maybe if you're wearing a turban, doesn't necessarily mean that you're Punjabi Sikh. You could be from another community as well. There's a difference between someone that's gone through an initiation and they're a Sikh, and how much of their religion they're practicing is very individual as well. So, you know, my dad wears a turban, but he he hasn't been initiated. He just does it because I want to show his bald head. So um, be open and curious about what some of these traditions mean to that person. Ask them open-ended questions. Use inclusive language. How do you and your family honor your loved one's memory? What's important for you? Uh, Grief may be expressed differently. Uh, some may be very reserved, and you kind of think, oh, this person is in acceptance of this loss, but it could just be that's how they're dealing with it. Maybe they've been told not to cry and not to share. And others may be quite expressive. And so I've been to lots of funerals where there's lots of wailing in the home as well, very uncomfortable sort of situation. Um, and yet there's others where it's so peaceful and people are just chanting and, you know, accepting what has happened. Uh, so your role is to validate all expressions of grief, and then to offer space for their storytelling, their prayers, or even silence. Using reflective listening skills, it sounds like your loved one was deeply cherished. Um, Respect family dynamics. Extended family often play a central role in grief and decision making. Might be really hard for you that if you're from an individualistic or sort of you come from that individualistic lens, you might kind of be like, oh, no, you have the right to make this decision. Well, I also have the right to choose to allow my elders to make those decisions as well. So it's what's important to that individual. So what I've found also useful in the classes that I facilitate or the one-on-ones that I do is, guided meditations with some just soft mantra music. You can use breath work as well or affirmations. I really found the breath work really works with a lot of people because it again helps move that grief through your body. Again, and then body scan. So helping the individual do a body scan to see, where is it that they're holding on to grief, and then allowing the breath to move through that grief has been really effective, for me, anyways. Okay. And now I'd like to introduce to you Sar Basra. She's a hospice palliative care social worker, and in this photo, she is seen with her mom, Joginder Basra, who passed away December 2023 in White Rock Hospice residence there of advanced Parkinson's. And I've watched Mrs. Basra and her journey, and Sarah how she supported her mom through her Parkinson's journey, all the family dynamics. And I thought, her sharing her story, grief story, would be really beneficial as we kind of see, the different dynamics and how uh, different families deal with some of their traditional kind of pressures that you have from the community on doing things a certain way, having certain prayers or not having them. So I really thank Sarb for being willing to share her story and her wisdom because she actually works in hospice as well. Over
Thank
to
you,
you, Sarah.
Jas.
Yeah,
Thank you, Jas. I hope my voice is okay.
excellent.
Um, yeah, I love this picture of my mom and myself. We were actually going to another reception party that day, and who knew I would be using this picture so often after she passed away, right?
Mhm.
So I'm not sure who's all on the line, but just maybe a little bit of background about myself. So, as Jas mentioned, I'm a hospice palliative social worker in South Surrey, White Rock area. I work in hospice and in the community, and I'm, of course, a daughter that had to go through a lot too. And I wore both hats, being a daughter who was grieving and supporting my family, being an advocate for my family in the health system, and also dealing with a lot of family dynamics because my mom was not the easiest person to deal with. And also my parents, they had their own relationship tensions, which wasn't easy to deal with since childhood. And then me being the eldest, I was the one that was kind of in charge, trying to kind of help my family. I have a brother who's about 10 years younger than me and a sister who's about 11 years younger than me. So I was kind of the main person. And as a social worker and someone working in healthcare, trying to really support my family. So I still, in terms of grief, as Jas mentioned, my mom died in December of 2023 in the hospice where I work, and my team was very supportive. And she had advanced Parkinson's. And through her journey, what had happened is the doctor had changed the medication because she was getting hallucinations. And from that medication change, it led to a lot of problems where she needed to be admitted in a hospital. But she needed an NG tube to give the Parkinson's medication. And from that, she became weaker and weaker. And then we had discussions about what the plan is going to be. And my mom said, I don't want an NG tube. And I asked her several times for her to hold my hand and squeeze my hand. And then that was her decision. And then she came into hospice and she stayed about a little over a week. And through that time, I was present with my mom, but I was also acting as a social worker, trying to support my family through the ups and downs. And also we sat vigil by my mom. I decorated the room very nicely because it was around Christmas time. She never had a Christmas tree, so we put up a little small Christmas tree. And I played, some of the Hindi music, Punjabi music, and some of the spiritual music that I thought would bring her comfort. So she was under medication and couldn't really talk, but I as a social worker, I also kept on, talking to her as if she could hear me. And I was with her 24 hours a day. And we also sat vigil, and I was, brought my dad and my brother and my sister who was on the iPad to really join in the vigil and to support my mom and to guide them to, say, uh, their thank yous and say whatever was in their heart to really express their grief and their gratitude to my mom before the end. And I was with her when she passed away. And from that, again, I came into that social work role, trying to support my dad and my parents and everybody. And so, in terms of my grief, from that whole experience, I was super, super exhausted. But what happens in our culture is when someone dies, people just want to come in, or when my mom was in the hospital, a few people had come to see her and they were really traumatized at how uncomfortable she was. And then when she came into hospice, I said, I don't want anyone here because oftentimes extended family members would want to come and see the person, and I wanted privacy. And I wanted her privacy to be protected and her dignity to be protected. So it was only my immediate family and maybe one of my cousins, and I had invited Jas to also share some spiritual prayers with my mom while I had wine. In hospice, you're allowed to have wine. So after that, when my mom had died, I was so exhausted, so exhausted. I told my dad I don't want any visitors for a few days. Whereas in our culture, typically people just kind of come unannounced, come at all hours of the day, and you're supposed to give them tea and coffee or whatever snacks and stuff so they can sit with you and you can tell your story to them. But I was so exhausted, I didn't want anyone to be coming. So that was something unique, I guess I did. And then that was a few days. I think I could have used a couple of weeks, to be honest with you. But anyways, that was a few days. And then a few close people would come. And because I didn't have anyone to help me, I actually decorated the house because that's what I do. And then I put the snacks and desserts and the coffee as self-serve, right? And so people could help themselves, whereas other people really have other family members helping them. And then, so then this went on. And then when my mom's funeral was actually in January, and again, I went through a lot of guilt myself because I would hear my mom in my head saying, first of all, people needed to come to, to grieve what they needed to do, and you prevented them from coming. And then I also thought, okay, it was about almost 3 weeks later that we had the witness cremation at a funeral home in Surrey. And I thought in my head, my mom was saying to me, you kept me in the freezer for this long. Why did you do that? Because typically the cremations happen within a week or so, but it was Christmas time. And I was trying to watch out for everyone's safety. So in the funeral, also, I selected a funeral home with my dad. It was mostly me because I selected a different funeral home from what our typical South Asian people select, because I wanted a place that was, in my view, a little bit more professional, a little bit more dignified, and we had more control over how we wanted things to go. So I there was a lot of different things. I guess people think that we did. I don't know. I just felt like my sister and I, we wore pastel suits in order to honor my mom, floral pastel suits, Indian suits. And this was actually one of her, what we call a dupatta, like the chunni, the scarf that actually I had put on her when she passed away, the one in the back of where my background here. So my grief is still there. At times, I still, ask myself, where did my mom go? Even though you know what everything happened, it's just sometimes it really hits you. Her things are still in her room. It's hard for me to go into the room, right? So I still support my sister and she supports me. I'm also, we try to support my young niece who's 7 years old about with her grief as well. And I just find that there's a real difference between sometimes generations, as Jas alluded to. There's a real intersection and also ongoing involvement and also diffusion of different generations and different cultures, and the whole notion of how we provide respect and dignity to our family member looks different for different people. And I think that things are really evolving over time as us that have been here for a while. Just like Jas, I came from India when I was young in the mid 70s as well. I basically have grown up here as well, but I'm familiar with both cultures. So it's an ongoing kind of tension, diffusion, evolvement, and intersection of all of these layers. So in the end, I guess I will want to say that the other thing that is unique, I guess, about our culture too, is we have mostly what's called witness cremations, where people actually help to put the coffin or casket into the crematorium. And at times, that can be pretty traumatizing for people too. And I know that when I have gone to certain funeral homes in the past where more South Asians, as Jas said, there was a lot of wailing. I personally found that very traumatizing. So the way that we experience grief is going to be obviously different if it's a young child versus, say, an older person. And sometimes there's a bit of a drama, as I think in most funerals that happen too. But I guess it's just keeping our hearts a little bit open about everyone's circumstances. And the other thing, as Jas mentioned, that oftentimes people disperse the ashes in a waterway. We still have my mom's ashes at home, and at some point we will do that. But I know that for my mom, it was important for her to be with the family. Excuse me. So I think my throat is giving out on me, but I just wanted to share that with the group. And so yeah, at times it's natural, of course, to experience that anxiety, anticipatory grief, and at times all of that is very denied, even though people experience that. It's like, okay, we need to move forward. So I think our community can really benefit from more education and awareness that this is also really normal too. So thank you. I'll get some water.
That was great. Uh, I have a question for you. So, like what I witnessed and what you shared as well is that you really, you kind of decided what was important for your family. You didn't allow like the societal pressure or the elders, like you've got elders in your family as well. You didn't really allow that pressure to guide what you decided to do. Can you just talk a little bit about like how you navigated that?
Well, actually, there was pressure.
Yeah.
There was pressure, and I think at times it was very upsetting for me. You
Mm-hmm.
know, the point about people coming and visiting at a certain time or setting the spiritual prayers at the Gurdwara
Mm-hmm.
by a certain time. And whereas I was like so exhausted and I didn't want anyone to come and see me and visit me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there were times where I wanted something or my sister wanted something in a particular way, but it was kind of like, oh, well, what would other people say? You know, like even
Mm-hmm.
for example, I don't know if people can see this. This was, oh, I guess
No, it's hard
on
to
here,
see. Mm-hmm.
but it's basically a very nice picture of my mom dancing and
Mm-hmm.
my sister wanted this picture on the desk where we go into the funeral home, and then I was like, well, I'm not sure if other people will really kind of think that's a good idea, but we still printed it and put it on there, but maybe not made it as big, right? So there were still those pieces where I felt that it wasn't totally our own grief. It was a combination of that. But I try to honor, you know, some of our family's wishes. Basically, it was me and my sister really at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And of course dad paid for everything. Um, but it was yeah, it was still there,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Yeah. And I did involve, of course, my aunt into a lot, some of the decision making in terms of some of the cultural processes and timelines. And so she was kind of the lead in that. And we really involved her
Mm-hmm.
and consulted with my dad and other uncle and other people.
And and you just reminded me of like some of the cultural kind of nuances in even the preps for the funeral. Like so, I had someone connect with me, and it's a young person that's grown up here. She's a lawyer, and her mom's passed, and um, like she wants to dress her mom and go and buy the clothes herself, but she has a grandma that's still alive, and her mom's side of the family said, no, tradition is we get to decide because she's our daughter. So it's kind of, really stressing her out because
Yeah.
she's like, well, yeah, they can pay for it if they want to pay for it, but I want to choose it.
Mhm.
And I know that I faced that when my mom's sister died. And
Mhm.
so my mom's brother's still alive, so he gets to pay for the last outfit. And
Mhm.
and then so he gets to decide, but like just practically, he lives
Yeah.
here, she lives in Toronto. How is this ever going to be possible? But it was such like a family like stress thing that
Yeah.
the
And it
outfit had to
creates a
come
lot of
from him.
tensions.
It's so much tension between the siblings. Yeah.
Yeah, and with my mom's suit, I was the one who went out and got it myself
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have anyone to really help me, and I wanted to pick out something that my sister and I wanted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
also, typically, as Jas mentioned before, in our cultures, when they bathe the body the day before the funeral and put on new clothes, um, uh, in our situation, I actually asked the funeral home people to put on the clothes
Mm.
and to bathe
Mhm.
her, which
Yeah.
was, I guess, technically we should do it, but we were
Mm-hmm.
just so busy too.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, well, I guess we could talk about a lot of things, but I hope it gives folks a little bit of an idea of the sometimes just the intersections of all of these layers and to really, as you've mentioned, to work with people on an individual basis, but knowing that, of course, there's a collective context as well. So, yeah, thank you.
And I see a really good question here that I think we've all asked ourselves, those of us that are kind of, navigating the two cultures, is how do you make sense of the pain that comes with the trade-off that's associated with all of these, tensions as well. Like, so it's like, you know, if I wait for my uncle to send that suit, like there's this, fallout. There was a fallout in our family because of all of that. And it like for me, it's just like knowing a sense of who I am and what my intentions are. I'm not trying to slight someone else or cause more pain, but this is what makes sense and allowing the other family members to make their way over or yeah, eventually they get over it, right?
Well, I just wanted to also maybe mention too is that that whole piece that Jazz you shared about accepting his will, the
Yeah,
God's will or
yeah, yeah,
destiny.
yeah.
And not everyone necessarily really feels that, even though that's
Mhm.
what's kind of guided by certain culture and religion,
Mhm.
because that comes from the yogic philosophy of looking beyond our body and souls about who we really are.
Mhm.
But not everyone really kind of feels that way, but that's what we're told to feel.
Yeah, no, I think that that's what, in terms of religion and all of that, like I think not very many people come to that point of really understanding, or
Mm-hmm.
even reflecting on what is life. Am I this body? Is there a soul inside of me? Like most people, I think there's more and more people that are curious and wanting to know for themselves, whatever that means for them, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, and it's not a yogic, it's actually Sikhism, Hinduism. That is the
Mm-hmm.
belief, is that this body is temporary. But there's a part of me that actually lives on, that is part of the bigger, whatever that ocean, and am I drop in the ocean or the ocean? Whichever
Mm-hmm.
way, right? So there's another question that I thought was really good. They're wondering how your dad accepted the
Mm-hmm.
changes you made and how he's doing.
Oh, okay. Well, my dad was okay, but he's a difficult guy too at times. I'm
I was going to
sorry.
say he
Yeah,
wasn't quite
so
okay.
no,
Yeah,
he wasn't quite okay with some
no.
things because we would get into fights about, like the about some of the legal things and some of the spiritual things that need to be set up by a certain time frame. And right now, I think he's grieving. Like he grieves in his own way, but because they had a complex situation, I think there's a lot of anger in him at times. But right now, what's also happening is there's a lot of people around his age, like in the 80s. He's just going to be turning 80, that around this phase, so many people are dying. And so now he's told me the other day, hey, I am thinking of getting my own funeral package, or this is what I want you to do about my ashes, right? So even though I, as a social worker, give this education to the public, I just feel my family doesn't really listen to me. So
That's like everybody's story.
uh, anyways, that's
Yeah.
how my dad is doing. We're getting along. I try to let go of some things too, because I started living with my parents a few years ago when my mom was sick too, to help out, but that was very complex too. So we're humming along, but I know he's kind of thinking about his own end of life too.
Mm.
So, and there we have some tensions, but I'm trying to let go.
Good. Then in
What
terms
other
of like
questions? Yeah.
talking about grief and loss in the community, so I do talk shows on the local South Asian media. I've done them for years now. There is hesitation to talk about it because again, when you're from that religious, the capital R religious background, and you say just accept his will,
Hmm.
well, people don't really kind of, okay, well, why do we need to talk about it? Because we're just going to accept his will. But then it's like, and it's like kind of like counseling. Why do you need to go counseling? Just accept his will. But like now, I think people our generation are realizing there's more
Hmm.
to it, right? It's not about just accepting a will. All have feelings. We all, have relationship dynamics, and there is a point to actually going to see a counselor. So, I think, the more we, normalize talking about it, the more, I think people will get the help that they need.
Hmm. And I think that just to add to that too, Jazz, is like sharing different experiences, right?
Yeah, yeah.
People from my dad's generation or older or younger, like, we're going to have different experiences.
Hmm.
And I think with the media too, with the radio media, there's so much media now in the South Asian
Hmm.
community that people are a little bit more engaged
Hmm.
about having some discussions and they want to learn, actually. Maybe some people don't, but
Yeah,
more and more
I think
people
our
really want to learn, right?
yeah, I'd like to say like dad's generation, like the education, like there was literacy issues, right? And so even like dad, I think has a grade five
Mhm,
education, maybe or maybe 10, maybe mom has a five. So there was low literacy, and so a lot
mhm,
of these things that were in the text were just, oh, that's just what it is. But they didn't really question it. They didn't really think about it. And now the next
mhm,
generation's like really talking about it, writing about it. I write through my social media about different issues all the time. I talk about
mhm,
them. And so I'm not just kind of looking at, oh, okay, this scripture here says, you're the light. So what does that mean? Right. And so I'm
mhm.
really, thinking about it, discussing it, and then living it, right? Living the teachings versus just reading them. I think that is key.
Yeah, and along with what Jazz has shared too, for me too, I have like, during the last number of years and through that whole time when my mom died. And also since then, I just write a lot actually on Facebook to share my personal experiences, but also questions. And I think a lot of people really appreciate that about the different experiences that we have or questions about whatever comes to our mind, whether it's generational, whether it's the way our community is or the way that what our scriptures say and what is our true experience and the
Mm,
involvement that is going through, right?
yeah. Well, I think we're kind of coming close to our Joshua's gonna
No,
yes.
I would never do that. I think the last question is actually pretty useful.
Yes.
And so if you want the last question, Sarb and Jazz is, I mentioned that, there's education needed for the community. How do you feel it would be best approached? And I think that's a great question. Would this education be best come from individuals from the same cultural background with lived experience versus anyone in the culture with lived experience? So how open do you think community would be? To publicly talk about these topics. So I think it's a great
Mm,
question as we move forward. So like, what do we do?
I think the more that we can talk about it, like so I have a profile in the community. People, I think they respect what I have to say. So when I'm out there talking, they're listening. Right. When I've developed this program, I think when we presented it through hospice, I think first time we had 90 some odd people sign up. And like usually our groups are 8 people, 7 people, like when we just offer them generally. And so the interest is there. And it's just a matter of, having the right people like that are known in the community present these ideas. And when people that are known in the community that are like, I don't know, like our media people are very well respected. And so when those people are talking about these issues, then I feel people are listening.
I think it's a real range. like some of our generation might actually connect more with someone that speaks English, right? Whether
Oh,
they're from the
definitely,
community or
definitely, yeah.
not in the community.
Hmm.
And then from our mom and dad's generation, they're probably listening to the radio or watching
Yeah.
the TV, right? So there can be a real range. And so that's the neat thing I think right now these days is I think there's so many more options, whether you create your own channel and you upload certain information that you want to share. But I think what's important is that people have to have some, just like with anybody, have some trust in the person that's
Yeah.
delivering the information, and that they know that you're actually an expert in what you're saying, and that you also value the cultural pieces of it, and you can see both lens, right? And be honest with that perspective, but respectful.
Yeah,
Okay,
so you're not there to change their views of don't wail at your funerals or, don't be silent or whatever. You're just there to share.
okay. So thank you so much for answering that question quickly, but I think it was a very important question. So thank you again, Jas and
Thank
Sarb, for
you.
your time today and just opening up and sharing your wisdom and your understanding and also the complications that can arise, which I'm learning a lot that I didn't sort of have in my own culture. And so it's just very knowledgeable about just the amount of distress that can come within family and making these decisions that yeah, I said I didn't know about. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So
And I
thanks for
try to give
inviting us.
hearts to everybody in the chat. So
All right.
thanks, guys.
Thanks everyone for joining us.
Okay,
I like
bye.
that.
Mhm.